Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to another Fun Ideas podcast. And today we have a special guest, artist, and his name is, I hope I pronounced this correct, Chris. Pat Moriarty, is that correct?
That's close enough.
Okay. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been staying pretty busy, and honestly, here in the Northwest, there's been a lot of smoke.
Yes.
And yesterday, my sinuses were killing me, and there was this event that I had to appear at, and I was afraid I was going to pass out, but I got through it. And the air is much better today, and my sinuses are much better, and so I hope that's it for the smoke season.
I hope so too.
This last 3 years or so, I've been living in the Northwest since like about 1990, and we haven't had any smoke until like this last 3 some years. Now every summer, it's bad, and you can look at the sun. It's that cloudy, or that smoky that you can look at the sun, and the sky's red and everything. It's kind of apocalyptic. It seems.
Yeah.
But today's okay.
Yeah, I think the worst year. I'm in Oregon, by the way. If I
Oh, you're probably in the smoke too.
Yeah. So the worst year was the first year of the pandemic. So 2020.
Yeah.
It was the pandemic and the smoke, and it's like it was this creepy red sky and everything.
We went through about 5 days of that. I live kind of close to Seattle. I'm in Port Orchard, which is west of Seattle, and we had about 5 days of that, in 2020, and I blacked out. The fifth day, I was like, I can't breathe, and I thought that if I go out, and I got on a ferry and I got over the water, and I thought if I get some big gulps of air over the water, maybe that's cleaner. No, it was worse. It was worse.
No.
And so I got to the other side, and I went to my friend's house, and I blacked out. So now I'm like paranoid about the smoke.
Right.
But so.
For me, I didn't, but like Friday, I went to an event. I'm in Springfield, so I went to an event, and ash was literally just dropping on my shoulders. So I put on the mask because I said I don't want to breathe all this crap in my lungs. And yesterday, I was just like knocked out. I just could not get up. I didn't black out or anything, but I was just like all day.
We had this outdoor event, and I was like one of the main guests, and it was like an outdoor block party, and vendors can set tables up. I almost just was going to skip it. I was like, but I was a trooper, and I showed up, and everything was okay. So
all right. Well, like I said right before we started, I'm contacting you under the auspices of that you were a mad contributor, but you only contributed like 2 things. So, but you've done a zillion other things. So, I mean, it's like, that's what we're going to go on here.
Yeah, I kind of jokingly tell people I'm like one of the last idiots of MAD, because when they relaunched MAD, they started back to issue 1, and they had the old-fashioned logo, and Susie Splab was the art director, and I think she still is, but they relaunched it, and they did 10 issues, and the first 10 issues was all new material, and Susie pulled people in, and she invited me to contribute, and I was super excited. It's like, oh, I get to be one of the idiots. But then after the 10th issue, they kind of discontinued it. Well, they didn't discontinue it. They switched it to where they were doing reprints, like theme-related reprints.
Right.
And, like all our Star Wars spoofs in one issue, or whatever, And so then it was like, I get in my foot in the door right at the last possible second, like if the whole history of MAD was 24 hours, I showed up at 1 second to midnight,
The doomsday clock.
Yeah. but I got to work with Dick DiBartolo, and that was a big thrill for me because I was reading Mad since I was a young kid and stuff. And I guess never say never. It's like they do have new covers,
Right.
and so I'm not holding my breath, but I wouldn't be surprised if I do something else for them.
Right.
I love Susie and I love Mad, and they loved what I did so far.
Right.
But I don't probably know more than me. You're writing a book, right?
I'm writing a book about Mad. That's true. And so probably the similar person who has a similar story to you, and he's been on the show a couple times, Andrew Goldfarb. And he was like in 3 issues and then done. And
did they show him the door, or did they just say, or the phone stopped ringing, or
no? It was a similar situation. We're kind of going to reprint now and everything like that. Interestingly, though, there is an Australian Mad, and he contributes to that.
Oh, so, I should get a hold of them.
Yeah, so they're bi-monthly. They're not completely new. They do a lot of reprints too, but they do more than the US Mads. So
yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm just glad I got in there. I just kind of feel like it was a bucket list thing, you know. And but honestly, I've been pretty busy lately. I do a lot of record covers, and I do a lot of t-shirt designs, and I do a lot of posters and occasional comics. I don't do as much comics as I did in the past, just mainly because they're so labor intensive and they pay so poorly, you know, that it has to be a labor of love,
right,
to do it. And I do have some comics projects brewing, like for example, you're probably familiar with Dennis P. Eichhorn.
I believe so. Yeah.
He's like the Harvey Picar of the Northwest. He did a whole series of comics for Fantagraphics, and then he self-published a bunch of stuff in later years called Real Stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely know that.
And I probably collaborated with him as much or more than any other cartoonist. I mean, was in a bunch of issues of that. And he lived nearby. He passed away a few years ago. And he was in the process of putting a new book together. And I was one of the artists working on a script for him. And after he passed away, it was like, oh, darn it, you know, and he was a good friend of mine, and I was sad about it and stuff. But after a while, I started wondering who all was working on a story for Denny at that time. And I kind of started playing detective, and I found a whole bunch of artists that were working on stuff, Colin Upton and Aaron Lang, and there were just a number of people. And so Howard Shakowitz, and a lot of the artists that he's worked with in the past. So I kind of asked people about it, and then I asked his daughter Sarah about it, and we kind of conspired to like, hey, as long as people drew these comics, like let's collect them and put out a posthumous book that Denny had in the works. So I was the art director. I used to be an art director at Fantagraphics, and I did all the production work on the Real Stuff, the 20 issues of Real Stuff. So I kind of know Denny's tastes and all that stuff. And so I started contacting people, and I said, did you draw that story? You know, and so people have been, I've been collecting them now, and I'm waiting on like 2 other artists. And so then I'll draw up a cover and write the intro. And then his daughter Sarah and I are gonna just co-publish it, just because I love Denny, and he was a great writer. You know, he wrote really pithy stories, autobiographical stories, and I had a 5-pager that I had started to work on, and then some years ago I drew 2 pages that Jim Blanchard was supposed to ink, and that was on ice, and I said, hey, do you want to ink that? And he inked it, and it looks great. And anyway, David Lasky and Mark Zingarelli and Donna Barr and Holly Tuttle and all these artists. So it'll be just like, and I'm keeping it up to the standards that Denny would have wanted. So that's something that's coming to fruition here soon.
Now, is that designed to be a final issue or just the first of an ongoing new series of them?
Well, it's all the stories I could track down
Okay.
after this. Like I asked Mary Fleener about it, like, hey, do you want to do something for this, or do you have anything from Denny that you haven't drawn up yet? I had like 3 scripts that were just sitting in a drawer because I'd known him for so many years, and so I didn't get around to drawing them all. So, but she goes, well, he's dead. Why would I do that? He's it doesn't make sense. But these were stories that he had brewing that he expected people to draw. He even had the artist's name on who was supposed to draw it. And I just want to finish what he started. I don't want to like exploit anything after that. Who knows? I know that he had a novel in progress he wrote, and he had ideas and stuff. But this is just stuff that was already in motion.
I see.
Before he passed away, and so that's enough to put into like a one book. So.
And when is that estimated to be released?
Well, there's no budget or deadline, so I can't pressure anybody. I'm just doing it for the hell of it. But it's almost done, and so maybe sometime. Probably, honestly, it'll be in 2023 because I still have to draw the cover, and I can't pressure anybody to hurry up and work for free. And like I said, comics are labor intensive. There's at least 6 panels per page, and maybe a 10-page. That's a lot of drawings. That's a lot of illustration work. And one reason I don't really do comics as much as I used to is that like I can get compensated more for one image than in an entire comic book, from I've got bills to pay and like everybody else. And so, it's not like I'm just motivated by money. But I'm somewhat in demand. So I keep getting interrupted from non-paying stuff to like do somebody's poster or
like
do somebody's do somebody's record cover or whatever, which I love to do because nobody tells me what to draw. Usually it's like here's the name of the record, and we don't know what the cover should be, and you're the artist. And I don't like to do those kinds of illustration jobs where they're super specific about what they want you to draw. Like, I want you to draw John Travolta in a convertible, and he's got a big head and a little body, and he's going down. And I'm like, no, I'm not drawing that. It's like I have to sign it, and it's like it's going to look like I thought up your dumb idea, and then I have to take credit for it.
Right.
So I'm like, the more you tell me what to draw, the more I'm not going to do that. I'm kind of contrary that way. It's still my artwork and it's still my vision, so I like to think up the ideas. So that still makes it fine art to me because I still come up with it from scratch.
Right.
So
now, how did you get your start? I mean, what did you go to any school or training, or did you just suddenly say, I think I'll be a punk rock artist or whatever?
Well, if you want to go way back, I always tell people this, but my parents were art students in Chicago in the 1950s. My dad, in the 1950s. My dad was a cartoonist in the Navy, and he had kind of a Mad Magazine-y kind of Bigfoot cartoony style. And so I was really influenced by and my mom was drawing all the time too at that time. And so when I was a little kid, I thought all families drew, and I got 2 brothers and a sister, and we all drew, and I just never really stopped with that. But then also, my parents, especially my mom, encouraged me. And, I always thought when I was a kid that that cartoonists were respected and they were like actors or authors and they made a lot of money, and that, but nobody bothered to correct me. And so now it's like, it's too late now. It's like I'm too deeply it's involved with cartooning, and it's just what I've drawn ever since I was a little kid. It's like my parents have drawings I did when I was like 5, of cartoony stuff. I used to watch the Jetsons and the Flintstones, and Milton the Monster was like one of my favorite shows, and all that flat, almost Hanna-Barbera kind of stuff was what was on Saturday morning cartoon shows that influenced me, and Mad Magazine, and things like that.
Did you ever consider being an animator or anything else, or what was your passion?
Well, I went to school at Iowa State University, and I knew I was going to take out student loans, and so I knew I had to get a job, and I knew I had to pay those loans off. So I wasn't just going to be a fine artist and just sort of, pay off my loans being a fine artist. I was like, I got to have a profession. So I went in for graphic design, and that's kind of like what my initial thing was, and typography and illustration and design work. And that's sort of how I got started. As soon as I was doing music related artwork and cartooning, all the time. Even like when I wasn't a professional, I was like drawing the Cramps and Elvis Costello and Devo and stuff. I was just stuff that I was inspired by. But when I got out of college, I moved up to Minneapolis because I was into punk rock, and all the punk rock bands I'm from Iowa. Iowa's like flyover territory for bands, or at least it was then. And so it's like if I wanted to see a good show, I'd have to go to Chicago or Omaha or Minneapolis or someplace like that. And I was really into the Replacements and the Phones and the Verves and these bands that would come down from Minneapolis. And so I made a beeline up there, and then I just started working up there. I sucked up to Twin Tone Records, this record label, and I did some cartoons for them. And I also did like just paste up work and production work. This was kind of before computers were that big of a deal. And I became a guard at the Walker Art Center, and met some artists that way, and met other people that way, and just got involved with the music scene. And I was doing cartooning for the local weeklies, the City Pages and the Twin Cities Reader and stuff like that. And then I started freelancing for agencies and media companies and stuff there. And I did really boring stuff at first. Like I worked at this place called Custom Laboratories, and they made slideshows for business presentations. And so I was making pie charts and bar charts and really flow charts, really boring stuff. But I was doing them with pen and ink and technical pens and stuff. And then eventually they realized that I was a cartoonist, and they had like what they called wake up slides. And so like they'd throw cartoons in once in a while to wake up people that were getting bored with all the statistics. And so pretty soon I became the wake up slide guy. And so I got to do all the cartoons.
That's cool.
And then that sort of started me being a cartoonist illustrator. And then it's like, fast forward to all these years now, and it's like I've just, done a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Right.
Now you mentioned the replacements. Yeah, I can't speak.
The
The
replacements,
and then eventually you did some work for them. So how did that come about?
Well, back in the 80s, when I was living in Minneapolis, one of my first freelance jobs with Twin Tone was, this is how long ago this was. Remember when CDs were brand new?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, this is better sounding than records. This is the new format, blah, blah, blah. Well, Twin Tone was going to take the Replacements discography, at least from their label, and re-release them on CD. And so my job was to make CD booklets out of their earlier records, you know, like Sorry Ma and Stink and Hoot Nanny and all that stuff. And so that wasn't really much creativity. You just shrink it, a big square down to a small square, and then you know, take the liner notes and make pages out of them and things like that. But so but I got a credit in there, and so I had something to do with the replacements just by doing that. And then also Soul Asylum was another label, a band on that label. And I got to be friends with their lead singer, Dave Perner, who was into underground comics. And when they re-released their stuff onto CD, they had extra pages that needed filled. So that's when I, like, one of my earliest published comics was on their Clam Dip and Other Delights was the album. And they have like this Herb Albert spoof on the cover, and part of my work was to like match that lettering and when they put the songs in there. And then in the CD booklets there were some blank pages. So Dave Perner rode his bike over to my place, and we kind of conspired on some comics, and we mixed lyrics and art together, and I did a couple of pages of comics that appeared in their CD booklets. And then I did a collage in one of their, in Say What You Will, another one of theirs. So then I started doing that. And then I started like doing production work on posters. I did some stuff for the Magnolias. And I did some stuff when the Mekons were on that label. So Good It Hurts, that album. I designed a poster using some existing artwork from the back cover, but I got to design the poster. And so then I started kind of doing that kind of thing. And then there was another label called Prospective Records, and there was a band called Swingin' Teens that was a local punk rock band. And let's see if I can find it. I might have it here somewhere. I pulled out a bunch of records in case. Oh, here it is. So this was like my first 45 sleeve. Let me get it out of the plastic so it's not so shiny.
Yeah.
Fire in My Head.
I've seen that before.
Yeah. And
didn't know it was you.
And then they also put out a 12-inch record that I did artwork on too. And that kind of started me doing you know, punk rock type stuff. And then eventually I started submitting comics to Fantagraphics in Seattle from Minneapolis. And they started publishing some of my stuff in their anthologies, Graphic Story Monthly and Pictopia and Prime Cuts, those kinds of anthologies that they had. And so around 1990, I helped a friend of mine from Minneapolis, another museum guard from the Walker Art Center. He moved to Portland. And so I helped him move just out of adventurousness to see what the Northwest was like. And I stayed with him for about a month down in Portland. And while I was there, I'm like, I'm gonna jump on Amtrak. I'm gonna go up to Seattle. I'm gonna meet those guys at Fantagraphics, and I'm gonna try to get them to publish some more comics, because I wanted to be a cartoonist more than anything. But to my chagrin, they were more interested in my graphic design skills than my cartooning, because I hadn't had a lot of experience yet. And I was still pretty much unknown other than just certain things. And but their art director, Dale Yarger, he was like, you guys should hire him. We need him here in the office. And I didn't really want to do production work. I was already doing some of that stuff in Minneapolis, and it was, you know, I would do it, but it wasn't really my intention. But they offered me a job, and I had to like think about it, and I was like, God, this could be a way to get my foot in the door. And eventually I became an art director there. And then I did like learn a lot more about cartooning because like people like R. Crumb were walking in the door and people that, heroes of mine. And I was getting advice from people and about how to do it.
Right.
And Fantagraphics kept publishing my work while I was working there. During the day, I was moonlighting as a cartoonist. So I was younger. I could stay up all night and draw and then go to work all day. And so then Starhead Comics. Are you familiar with Michael Dowers? And he was a publisher in Seattle at the time, and he published. He's the one that really wanted me to wanted to publish me. Like Fantagraphics was kind of indifferent to me at first because, like I said, I had no experience, I had no reputation or anything.
Yeah.
And but Michael Dowers saw something in me, and so he published Big Mouth #1, my very first comic book. And that was like the reverse of American Splendor. Harvey P. Carr wrote autobiographical stories and he had different people draw them. Well,
Right.
I thought, I'll do the opposite. I'll have a bunch of writers and then I'll illustrate the stories. And so I had met Harvey P. Carr when I was still living in Minneapolis because I went to the O'Hare Airport in Chicago when there was a comic convention there. And I showed him some of my early work and he was like, "Oh, this stuff's pretty good. You ought to call Fantagraphics." He kind of put Fantagraphics on my radar and helped me finish this story that they published. And so then when I was actually working at Fantagraphics, and got this comics thing with Starhead, I asked Harvey if he would write a story for my first comic book, and he said sure. And he wrote the introduction to Big Mouth #1.
Wow.
And then one time when Crumb was in the office, I was like, "Hey, I'm working on a comic book. Harvey Picard wrote the first story in it, and I've got some other stuff." And so he goes, "Oh, that's interesting," And then like a while later, he mailed me a story, or Crumb. It's like I was like a nobody. And so he sent me this story and I was super intimidated. I was like, "Oh my God, I don't think Crumb has ever written a story for an artist. I know he's illustrated other people's stories, including Harvey, but mostly Harvey." And so I had Harvey P. Carr and R. Crumb in my first comic book. It was unheard of. It was unheard of. So those guys kind of launched me, really. And then eventually Dennis Eichhorn wrote something, and he had connections with Charles Bukowski.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was sending he was sending comics to Charles Bukowski. No, Charles Bukowski saw something I did in Real Stuff, this story called Death of a Junkie. And that was Real Stuff was one of the anthologies that Fantagraphics was publishing a lot of my work in. And Bukowski was a fan of Denny's comic. And he wrote Denny a letter and said, "Hey, if Pat wants to illustrate any of my stuff, I'd be honored." And I was like, "What?" So
Wow.
so now I have all these super big names in my, and some people were like, why is this guy landing all these writers? This doesn't, but I was just lucky. And my first couple of comics, honestly, weren't really all that good, but they were good enough to keep it going. And then Fantagraphics published Big Mouth #3. And so then I kept moonlighting and doing the comics. And I made it to about issue 7. And by then, I started getting freelance work with like Nickelodeon magazine, and I was doing I did a couple of things for Details, and I started getting the idea that maybe I can just be a freelancer, and so I ended up, I worked at Fantagraphics for about 8 years,
Okay.
about 91 to 98, something like that. And then I quit, and I honestly haven't had a real job since then, other than being an adjunct professor at the Seattle Art Institute. I taught occasional classes there, about 1 class per quarter, in their animation department. And I taught comics and creative writing, and then eventually storyboarding, and then making animatics. So like I had to educate myself about animation to regurgitate it back to the students, and it was real similar to comics. It's like storyboarding is just like comics, except the words are under the panels instead of in the panels,
Right.
And so that's how I kind of started getting into animation. And so I've just been looking for gigs ever since, really, just whatever. And then eventually I did an animated official music video for The Replacements.
Oh,
I just
wow.
did it. I just did it about 6 months ago, actually. And Rhino Records re-released Sorry Ma, Forgot to Take Out the Trash. I think it's their first full-length album. And so then they wanted to celebrate it with music videos. The Replacements were famous for not wanting to do music videos, or not wanting to be in music videos. If you ever saw one, it was just like a close-up of somebody's foot or somebody's finger on an armchair. They wouldn't show the band. And but Paul Westerberg himself approved my storyboard, and I did a really rough storyboard for the song "Shut Up," and it was a song that they used to do to try to like clear the room at the end of the show. They like, if they were just, it was super obnoxious song. And so I did that, and he approved it. And so then I did that. I had to do it in 3 weeks. I pretty much had carpal tunnel by the time I was done with it. A big stack of paper, and it was all pretty much like just all in pencil, really loose and rough. But it turned out really good, and I'm really happy with it. And they liked it, and it's got a jillion views already and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, I guess I'm going sideways.
That's
cool.
Quick question about Fantagraphics. Did you work on Comics Journal at that time?
Yeah, I was the Comics Journal's art director for 3 years. Yeah, Dale Yardner was their art director, and then he went on to be the art director of Seattle's weekly The Stranger. And I was the co-art director working with him. We were good buddies. He's deceased too, unfortunately, but we were really good buddies, and Dale pretty much educated me. And so when he went on to The Stranger, then I stepped into the art director chair there for the Comics Journal. And Dale had done his logo for the Comics Journal, and then it was a new era when I took over, and then I designed the new logo, and I put the covers together, and I laid out the pages, and all that kind of stuff, and that took up a whole bunch of my time. And that's what I was doing up until '98 when I decided to. Well, it was like a math problem again. It was like, I'm getting all these freelance jobs that I have to turn down because I'm working my full-time job that doesn't pay that great. And I'm doing all this work promoting other cartoonists I loved, like, Peter Bagg and Dan Klaus, and all those guys were like artists that were way higher up the tier and more experienced than me. But I was doing production work on their books and doing the Comics Journal and stuff, but I wanted to be a cartoonist too.
Right.
And yeah. So I quit and started working from home. But Eric Reynolds is still there, and Gary, and those guys are still good friends of mine. And Kim Thompson's another guy who's passed away, unfortunately, but yeah. Anyway.
I occasionally do things for them because Sid Jacobson of Harvey Comics passed away recently, and they wanted an obituary for me, so I wrote that up. So
isn't it sad that we're so old now that everybody's dying? And I still think of myself as a kid. It's like I still smoke pot, I still listen to punk rock, I still draw cartoons. I'm like I'm a professional child. I'm in denial. I'm 61 years old.
Wow.
But I don't know, maybe it's not that old, but
I'm a few years behind.
I still have hair, and I still
Well,
have my health.
I'm thinning, but I am going to be 56 in about 3 months, so I'm a little bit behind you. So
Not by too much. It goes
Yeah.
by so fast.
yep.
But I'm still a cartoonist, and I'm working out of my home. This is my art studio here. I remodeled my garage into an art studio, and I've been working out of here since the year 2000.
Let's talk about a little bit of some of your freelance things. Rolling Stone.
Well, that wasn't freelance.
Oh.
Rolling Stone.
They give you some award, didn't they?
This is sort of what made me start thinking about being a freelancer. But in 1996, see how long ago this was? in 1996, every year Rolling Stone put out an issue called the Hot Issue, like hot actor, hot director, hot author, whatever. Well, in 1996, Cameron Diaz was the hot actress, and she was on the cover, and I was the hot cartoonist. And it was because Big Mouth was popular, and so that started the phone ringing, and that's when I started realizing, like, I can't afford to work at Fantagraphics anymore. I'm wanting to be a cartoonist and an illustrator, and now it's the phone's ringing, and so it was kind of frustrating. I love Fantagraphics and everything, but still I wanted to be my own thing, really. And so Rolling Stone was one of the things that pushed me along,
So how did they find out about you? I mean,
from Big Mouth. Somebody from Rolling Stone called, and it was one of their writers was into the comic, and they interviewed me and put it in the magazine. It was just a short little blurb. I mean, there's one image of one of my cartoons, and it was like maybe a quarter of a page or half a page in the magazine, but that was enough, because it's like at that time, people thought of, if you were in a mainstream magazine, that means that you're real. That means that you're legit. So all of a sudden I became legit. And and then I was in a shit ton of whoops, pardon my language, but a bunch of the Nickelodeon magazine. They had a comic section there called The Comic Book, and they were keeping a lot of underground cartoonists alive, and Kaz and a whole bunch of people. And so I started doing stuff for that, and then National Geographic Kids magazine was kind of like stealing a lot of the Nickelodeon artists. They were even almost impersonating Nickelodeon, because like I did not just comics, but I did games and puzzles and things like that. And so then they started cherry picking some of the Nickelodeon cartoonists, and they said, hey, could you do a game page for us, or could you do something? And so and then Highlights magazine got on board, that you read that at the dentist's office.
Right.
And so I kind of started doing kids stuff, and I was still doing underground comics, like for Fantagraphics anthologies and other magazines, but just mixing it up, with underground comics and kids comics. All you really got to do is just don't put any genitalia or bad words in there. You can still draw in the same style, and it would be okay. My cartoons almost have like a fake innocence to it anyway. Cute kind of, and that kind of thing. So I was well suited to segue into that kind of stuff.
But I always found that amusing, because I would see artwork like yours, or probably saw yours in things like Nickelodeon, and then a month later seeing something in some hardcore kind of graphic.
Something like borderline porno.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, It's interesting all these children's magazines seek out these intense artists, but it might be because they like the art, you know. They're not worried about the
Yeah,
graphics.
and artists are versatile and stuff. I never did anything too bad with porno comics. It's like you're not going to get aroused by anything I draw. I almost did like a satire of porno. Like probably the dirtiest thing I did was not Fantagraphics, Eros, the smut side company to Fantagraphics.
Right.
They put out this really cool comic called Two Live Crew Comics, and Two Live Crew was this rap. Do you remember them? They're like a rap band that got in trouble for censorship, and they had a song called "Me So Horny."
Oh yeah,
and all their songs were dirty, and so they decided to put out an anti-censorship comic, and they got like J.R. Williams and other goofy cartoonists like me to illustrate their songs, but nobody would do Me So Horny because it was so dirty, and it was sort of like the I don't know what it was, the elephant in the room, but it also was like an albatross, and so nobody would do it, and I was like, well, I'll do it, so I did that one, and I made it as cartoony and over the top and ridiculous as possible. And then when they reviewed the book in the Village Voice, they took a panel from one of my panels and used it in there, and I was like, all right, I'm in the Village Voice. It was just another big thrill, but it wasn't really dirty, or it wasn't really sexual. It was just like a goof, and then what else?
See, I have things, if I just mention them, you might have a memory. Flock of Dreamers.
Oh, well, that wasn't dirty.
I'm not saying dirty stuff. I'm just saying freelance stuff you've done.
Yeah, we're talking about the subject of like, have I done anything dirty? It's like there's not very much.
Well, so I figured you covered it with Me So Horny. Anyway.
Well, Eric Reynolds put out a book called Dirty Stories. And I did 2 pages in that, the inside covers, and they were also super goofball. And it almost could be like Nickelodeon if it wasn't for the content, but the drawing style was but Flock of Dreamers was an anthology that had to do with people transcribing dreams. And do you know Alexander Zograf, the Serbian cartoonist?
I've heard of it.
He did a book for Fantagraphics called Life Under Sanctions, and it was like while the NATO and the USA were bombing the shit out of Belgrade, he was like this cartoonist over there, doing journalism about it, and Fantagraphics was publishing it. And so he pulled me into that book. There were a bunch of different artists. Crumb was in there and some other folks. And so I was just chomping at the bit to like be in anthologies with other established cartoonists because I was trying to get in there. And so that's where that came from, that anthology. I forgot about that one.
Then there's a documentary. I mean, this is kind of shifting gears a little bit, but that you appear in called Hooked on Comics. How did that one come about?
Oh, Hooked on Comics, I think that was David Moore that put that. He was a comics fan, and he was into underground comics. And in the early 90s, Seattle was kind of turning into a hotbed for music and for comics.
Yep.
And so I just happened to move to Seattle right when Nirvana hit and all that stuff was going on, and because of my background with music stuff in Minneapolis, then I ended up doing some things for like Sub Pop and Estrus Records up in Bellingham and some of these other small labels. But what was the question?
It was Hooked on Comics, the
Oh,
documentary.
Hooked on Comics. Yeah, David Moore came up there and he was like trying to document this renaissance in Seattle and music and comics.
Mhm.
And so I was just living in Seattle at the time, and I was living in a house with a bunch of cartoonists, J.R. Williams and R.L. Crabb, and eventually Jeremy Eaton. And there's a whole like a rotating door of cartoonists that lived in this house. Helena Harvelix was the Comics Journal's editor at the time and stuff. But anyway, they just came to our house and they interviewed R.L. Crabb in his bedroom. They interviewed J.R. Williams in his bedroom, and then they interviewed me in my bedroom.
Wow.
And no, they interviewed me while I was washing the dishes, I think. And
Got to see this
so
again.
and after that got all after they got the movie all together, I don't know why they asked me, but they asked me to do the cover to the VHS tape box.
Wow.
And so Dale Yarger, the Fantagraphics art director, designed it, but I did the illustration on the cover. And then after that, they did another Hooked on Comics focusing on Chicago. And they asked me to do the cover to that one. And I'm like, I'm not in it. And they said, well, we just want you to. So, and then they did another one that was just focused on Tony Millionaire and Dame Darcy. And they wanted me to do the cover to that one. And I'm like, but why? But probably more like for my graphic design skills, and probably those guys couldn't be bothered to do it. I don't know. So I did all three of the Hooked on Comics covers. And then years later, there was another documentary called Bazango, Washington. And I was in that one, and that was like another focusing on Seattle, not exclusively, but a lot of it was the history of cartooning in Seattle, going clear back to like 1906. And the very first Seattle cartoon character was this guy called Umbrella Man. And he was actually a real person, and he wore an umbrella on his head, like a helmet. And there's photographs of him and stuff. Whoop, I'm going blurry. And they wanted me to do the poster, the movie poster. And they wanted Umbrella Man on the poster. So this guy was a real person, but I guess in the early days, there was this weatherman that worked for the Seattle PI paper, and he was also a cartoonist. And he started putting Umbrella Man on the weather page. And so he kind of became like this spot illustration type cartoon character. And then, and there's been some books he's published and stuff too. But long after Umbrella Man died, the cartoon character just kept going on like a zombie. He was still, people forgot that he was even a real person, you know. But so I put Umbrella Man on the poster, and that was but yeah, that was a cool documentary too. So I've done a few movie posters. That one behind me, Derailroaded, I designed, it's not a cartoon, but I designed that poster. It was a documentary about Wildman Fisher, street singer, and his relationship with Frank Zappa. But I did 3 minutes of animation that appeared in that movie. It was a hallucination sequence. He eventually was recording music with Bill Mummy, the guy that was Will Robinson from Lost in Space. Well, he went on to become a fairly known musician and novelty music and stuff. And he recorded and produced a whole bunch of Wildman Fisher stuff, and really strange stuff. And I guess Wildman Fisher started having paranoid delusions that like Dr. Demento and people were trying to kill him, and that there were backwards messages in the songs. So they the filmmakers gave me one of the songs, and they said, we want you to animate what's not in the song that Wildman Fisher thinks is in the backwards messages, you know. So it's just a really strange hallucination. But oh, you got a kitty there, or is that
that's
a dog?
That's a dog. That's a dog.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
dog.
Oh yeah, hi there. Hi, Poochie.
Yeah, I mean, she wanted to jump on my lap, but I didn't want to.
Oh.
So I put her up a couple seconds ago. She's a camera hog.
Yeah,
So,
she's
anyway.
hanging out.
Anyway.
But anyway, that was just like one of my earliest animation things, was doing that. That was like 2006 or something like that.
Okay.
I did. So I, you know, I know that I'm a cartoonist, but I've done a lot of graphic design, and I've done a lot of, you know, that's from being an art director, you know, and being having that background. So you know, I'm able to do it. So
now, typicically today, do you do just artwork, or do you do a cross section of everything, graphics and everything?
I think over the years, sort of like I've kind of become it's been kind of a slow burn. It's like when I was younger, I kind of had to be like a chameleon, and I had to like change styles to suit the client, you know, like, oh, they want this to be realistic, or they want something cartoony for this, or this is just typographical, and this is just whatever. But like over the years, I've kind of garnered this reputation for doing like ridiculous detailed illustration work, kind of Mad Magazine-y kind of art. So now when people get a hold of me, it's because they want some sort of ridiculous Pat Moriarty style drawing. And they even like don't tell me what to draw. They're kind of like, you're the artist, you know, we're not, you know, you do what you do what you do. So I'm lucky now, because like it's by the time they call me, they know what they're getting into. They know that they're going to get something that's not very serious. Well, I'm serious as a heart attack about quality and about the artwork serving a purpose, because that's what graphic design is problem solving for a client. You know, it's got to make someone buy the shirt. It's got to make someone go to the show. It's got to make somebody attend the festival. It's got to make somebody buy the record. It's got to make somebody pick the book off the shelf and flip through the pages. So it serves a serious purpose. But by the time they get a hold of me, you know, they want something ridiculous from me that is going to help their cause, whatever it is, you know.
Now, before we went on, you were holding up a couple things here, and I was just curious what they were.
Oh, one thing I was holding up just to see if my camera was working. This is a Serbian punk rock band called Nup. And see, like I've got like the world is like if farting in a nuclear explosion. And this kind of came out through Alexander Zograf, the Serbian cartoonist, but they wanted me to do a cover for them. And so this was back in the 90s, and I did that. And years later, 2012, I got invited to Serbia to participate in a festival there, a comics festival. And I got there, and I was like, I wonder why. I wonder why they want me to go. And when I got there, I realized that Nup was like the Nirvana of Serbia. You know, they were really well known. They had a whole bunch of records, and there were 2 or 3 records that looked like they were homages to my farting world here. And and so people knew who I was from my punk rock covers, but I didn't even bring it to my art show there. I'd forgotten that I'd done some Serbian stuff. But yeah, anyway, so that's what that is.
Okay.
But
then there's like an album you held up or something like that.
Yeah, and then another thing I held up when we were testing the camera was probably Ball Bag. Yeah, and Ball Bag is a punk rock band from Renton, Washington, and Bear versus Otter is the name of this. And you can see I took the Cheap Thrills lettering
Yeah,
from
I was
the,
gonna say a very good Grum influence.
yeah. Well, it's just the font. It's just the font.
Yeah.
But that said, I am super influenced by Crumb. He told me about the Hunt 102 nib and the Winsor Newton brushes, this Red Sable and Bristol paper and so I was like, yes sir, and because you know he was like one of my favorite, if not my favorite cartoonist. And but actually Ballbag asked me to do the Cheap Thrills lettering. It's like
I see.
Okay.
they asked me to do that. I also did a t-shirt for them that just came out here and
Oh, cool.
you know, this is flaming lettering, but it still looks like that record.
Right.
And I've got a flaming bowling ball bag, and you can see the bowling ball was like, no. But I've done a couple of their records. This is their first record.
Let's see. Ballbag. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And yeah, it got the band in there and stuff. And yeah. But
Now on things like that, do you just do the artwork, or do you actually do the graphic design on it as well?
I do everything.
Oh, okay.
Well, one thing I did recently was this CD cover for Neutral Boy, this punk rock band from Bremerton, and they let me name the album, and they also gave me all the recordings, and they let me name the songs. So I was like, it was super fast punk rock, and I was listening really close to try to capture a phrase, like, what did he say? You know, and so I got to name all the songs. I got to name the album, and I dreamt up the image. And,
Wow.
that's like, nobody tells me exactly what to draw, because then it kind of like, then it isn't mine, you know? It's sort of like, you know, but so yeah, I designed it from scratch. Let's see. This is a new album by Lavender Country, and this just came out, and it's been reviewed in Rolling Stone and Spin and Billboard magazine and all that stuff. Lavender Country is known they're in the Country Music Hall of Fame for having put out the first openly gay country album in 1973. So
73, wow.
73, yeah. Their lead singer, Patrick Haggerty, he's like 78, 79 years old. And and so this is their sophomore album. It came out 49 years later.
Oh wow.
But then I'm gonna keep making the camera blur if I do this, but the Von Zippers, they're a punk rock band from Calgary, Canada. This is actually a gatefold. You know, I dreamt this up too. It's like, you know, can you see all that?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is based on the lyrics to one of their songs. The name of the album is called "The Crime Is Now" instead of "The Time Is Now."
Did you do the inside too, or just the outside?
Yeah. No, I did the whole thing.
Oh wow.
They got a song about a cross-dressing murderer. And
Judy.
so I put that in there, and then
Those are
I do
cool.
a lot of graphic design type stuff. This one is wait for the camera to focus.
All right.
Hey Lover is this band from Portland, and this is a giant mural they hired me to do, and then the band, they stuck their heads through the holes. I got this cracking.
Oh, wow.
It's like it's strangling the band.
I thought it would just be their heads pasted on there like an old 16 magazine or
yeah. Well,
something.
you know, I was like, well, why do they wanted it to do it for real? So so then the back of the album is you can see them sticking their heads through it, so you can tell that, and then the names of the songs. And then on the inside of it, it opens up and it's in Astoria, Washington.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah, and there they are posing next to the artwork.
That's so cool.
Yeah, this is a really good punk rock album.
So where's that artwork now?
It's in Astoria. It's in an indoor skating rink or indoor skate, not skate shop, but a place where you can ride your skateboard inside. And so they sold it to them, and so it has a home, because I was like, what's going to happen to this giant piece of artwork now? But
I guess that's a question on all these. I mean, what happens to the original art on all these albums and stuff? Do you keep it, or they keep it? Or?
Here's another one by the Weirdos. This is a Bremerton punk rock band. This just came out in June. Broken Hungry, and there's the back cover. Usually what happens to the artwork is there's somebody that's like, I went to that show or I bought that album, and so I want to buy the original artwork, and everything I do is a black and white pen and ink drawing, and so there's an original. Usually with digital art, there isn't an original.
Right.
And it's like, who wants to buy an inkjet printout that you can make 1 million copies of? But if there's just one drawing, then somebody's like, I want that, And so I sell originals. And if not, I just put them in the archives, and I have, occasional art shows and stuff with them. I have an art show hanging right now for 3 months up in Polsbo, and it's up there right now. It's open until till October.
So you kind of answered the question, but I'll ask it again. Do you draw on paper, or do you draw on the computer nowadays?
I draw on. I draw on paper.
Okay.
When you draw on a tablet, it's like the line quality all kind of looks generic. And it's like I've spent all this time honing my skills with crow quills and stuff like that, where it's like I'm good at that, and it's like, why do I want to start over with a tablet and then have this generic line quality that everybody else has? That's why I can't stand artwork that's been done in Illustrator or something, because it's like, it's so smooth, it's almost sterile. And I think that the secret sauce to good artwork is imperfection.
Yeah.
It's like, look at Crumb's stuff. He doesn't have a single straight line. And it looks it's like the art of appearing to be casual. Even when you're serious about it, that if you can make it look casual, then it looks like a human made it, and it's more relatable. If it's too perfect, then it kind of, I don't know, it doesn't work for me. It's just.
Now, what do you usually use? Do you use a canvas, or what type of supplies or inks or whatever do you use?
Well, I'm not really much of a natural artist, so I always start on typing paper and do a whole bunch of shitty sketches that don't work. Like I do like 20 terrible drawings that are really small thumbnails, and then I pick the bingo sketch, and then I blow that up a little bit bigger, and then I turn on the light table, and then I draw it again on some nicer paper. Usually it's Bristol paper. And 400 or 500 series, Strathmore or something, or Canson paper, whatever I can find that's good paper, and something that'll take an ink line, because I draw with one of these nibs. You've probably seen these. I don't know if I can hold it up to the camera, but they're really super fine point. This is the Hunt 102 that Crumb told me about. And so you scratch all the lines on there, just like Thomas Nast did in the old days. And so you need to have good paper that's not going to bleed like toilet paper or something, and have the ink. So this holds a good line on Bristol. And so
you work with brush too, or just ink?
Yeah, no, I've got, since this is my workspace, it's like, yeah, I've got brushes.
Okay.
And I've got nibs, but and then I still use, nobody uses these anymore, but I have rapidograph pens. And, and I use whiteout.
Wow.
Yeah, I make mistakes like crazy, and I erase and change my mind all the time. And it used to bother me when I had to do that, but now I realize that it's not really art, or it's not even really done yet until it's got some whiteout on it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I also noticed that, like, if you do too good of a job, then when people want to buy it, they can't tell if it's a print or not, if it's too perfect. But if
Right.
they look at it close and they can see some eraser marks, and they can see some indentations where the pencil was there and a little bit of whiteout, then they're like, that's the original. You know, and what's even better is if you had to, like, cut out a piece of paper and glue it on top of the part that sucked and draw it again, and they can
Right.
see a patch on there, then that's even better. They're like, that's the original. They can prove it by looking at that stuff. So now if I spill ink on my art, or if I have to white something out, it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't get like when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, damn it. You know, but now it's like, you know.
Who was the king of whiteout was Charles Rodriguez. He used to draw Shut Ups for Cracked, and he also drew for National Lampoon.
Oh yeah.
But he'd like cake it on.
Yeah. Well, one thing that was really educational for me working at Fantagraphics, I don't think this is the case anymore because artists just send digital images probably.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, they sent their freaking artwork to Fantagraphics. And then, like, I would be the guy in the dark room shooting stats and,
Oh yeah.
and you know, doing that stuff. And I got to see up close and personal, like, you know, Crumb's artwork and Drew Friedman's artwork and anybody you can think of, where I was like looking really close. How did they do that? You know, and Dan Klaus and Peter Bagg, all those guys, Roberta Gregory, Sherry Flanagan, all these like superstars. I got to see their artwork up close and personal. And it took a lot of pressure off because I saw a lot of whiteout. I saw a lot of erasing. I saw a lot of patches. I saw a lot of blue pencil, things like that. And it's like, that's what makes it a special piece, because, you know, that stuff they don't expect to be reproduced when it's printed. But you see all these strategies artists have used where they, you know, pasted the lettering in because they screwed it up the first time, or things got edited and they had to change it and things like that. And so then I learned to, like, just lighten up, you know.
Right.
When I first moved here in Eugene, Springfield area, they did an EC show, and they had some originals of Wally Wood, and he actually had like frames that were exactoed out, I guess, and replaced that way. You know,
Yeah.
and I go, you would never see that looking at a comic book. It's
Yeah,
just,
you never know.
Yeah.
And EC was like one of the first publishers where they didn't use hand lettering for the balloons. They used a font.
Right.
And you know, I typically hate seeing a font in a comic, especially Comic Sans. Oh God, it's like, it'll ruin it. It's like you spent so much time on that artwork, and now you're going to throw some Comic Sans on there, and with a super perfect oval that a computer made. It's like you did this sincere artwork. Why did you do that? You know, but the old EC comics, it's like somehow it works. I think
it's that Leroy lettering that works. I don't know. It looks creepy, I guess.
Yeah, I thought it was Helvetica Rounded or something. But
I've heard Leroy, but there might be two names for it. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you're probably right. You know more than me. But it works for EC. I mean, it looks good.
A lot of those pieces you showed are in color. So how do you color them? Are those on the computer, or what do you do?
Almost everything I do starts off as a black and white pen and ink drawing on Bristol, and then I'll scan it, and I try to hide any evidence of any computer anything. So like but when I'm coloring, I'll just use the paint bucket tool, and I'll just use Photoshop, and I'll just put flat colors in there, and just, you know, no gradations and stuff that makes it look computery. But another thing I used to do was I would put the artwork on a transparency and then turn it backwards and then paint the back of the film. And then so the line work is on the other side, and the paint is on the back. So then you can get inside the lines and get good fills. And So like I did a lot of covers for the Tijuana Bible reprints.
Yeah.
Michael Dowers from Starhead was doing bluesy tunes and collected Tijuana Bibles, and just like the Two Live Crew thing, it's like people were like, I don't want to do the cover to that. Those are the dirtiest comics ever. It's like, I don't want to be associated with that. But I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it's Popeye and it's Blondie and Dagwood and stuff. And it's like, it's historical. So I did the covers to those, and I would paint on the back of the film for those. But these days, sometimes I'll paint, but mostly I'll use Photoshop for color because I like ink. I like pen and ink drawings, and I like that. I'm getting good at that. Pen and ink drawing is what I'm basically known for. So I try to stick with that, and then just use color as the artwork needs to work in black and white, and then the color is like frosting, or it's like the extra. It's extra. Right. But it has to work in black and white first, or I won't color it. It's like I've got to make sure that, I don't know why I think like that, but maybe it's from being an underground cartoonist. Yeah.
One thing I didn't ask you about is you had a comic strip at one point. It says Loop de Loop.
Yeah, Loop de Loop. That goes back to the music scene, and in the 90s, and before I showed up to Seattle, but there was this music paper in Seattle called The Rocket, and lots of well-known designers and illustrators contributed to The Rocket. Art Chantry is probably the biggest name for the designers, and Dale Yarger worked for The Rocket too. And lots of illustrators like Mark Zingarelli and Michael Dugan and people like that did artwork. And during the last 3 years of The Rocket, they had a comic section in the back, and I did a one-panel gag, music related usually stuff for that paper, and so. It came out every 2 weeks. And so, I had to come up with a gag for, for that issue every time. And I ended up doing about maybe 100 or 150 of those. And then in the year 2000, I believe, The Rocket ceased to exist. It just disappeared. As a matter of fact, I did the last official cover to The Rocket that was distributed, and I never did get paid for it. They didn't announce anything; they just stopped. And there was one more issue that came out where they only printed like 200 of them, and they didn't really get distributed. They just got handed out to their friends and stuff. But and I did a strip in that one too. But Loop de Loop. I've never posted any of the artwork from that, and I've never done anything with it, but there is plans. This Fogland Studios, Fogland Publishing is collecting those strips, and I'm going to have a book of that soon, so that will be fun.
Well, that leads to me to probably my final question. There's still that weird echo if I sound funny. I know, maybe it's on me. It's not. It's in my headphones. Anyway, what are you working on now, and what can we look forward from you in the next year or so?
Maybe if I turn the volume down, the echoing will go away. Maybe like my microphone is picking up your.
That's probably what it is. Oh, that's perfect. Of course, it's the end of the show before we're doing this, but that's okay.
Oh, well, you can ask me more stuff. But what was your question?
Okay, starting again. Take two. Basically, you said that's going to be collected into a book, the Loop stuff.
Strip.
So yeah. It just leads me to ask, what should we expect from you in the next year? You showed some recent record albums. What's coming up book-wise or otherwise from you in like the next year or so that you can talk about?
Oh, what am I working on right now? God, I've got like a checklist of stuff. I get anxious when I start thinking about it. But I just did an album cover for a comedy album. there's a comedian from Olympia, Washington, and his name is Sam Miller, and he recorded his debut comedy album at the Capitol Theater in Olympia, and he's on Stand Up Records, and Stand Up Records is in Minneapolis, and I've done a little bit of work for them. I did a cover for Dylan Mandelson, and I actually did an animated short for them too. And I also did, speaking of Stand Up Records, I did these bumper stickers.
I think I have one of those actually, because I met the guy who runs Stand Up Records.
Oh, you know Dan?
Yeah.
His car was just his car was just stolen today.
Oh,
I found out because I just finished this Sam Miller's cover and sent it to him, and he said, give me a minute. Someone stole my car. I'm a little bit busy right now, so I kind of feel bad about that right now. But I got that. There's a band called Face the Sun that I'm doing some artwork for. I just did the poster to the Poles Bowl Film Festival in October, and I have some commissions to do. I try to contribute to Mineshaft magazine. Are you familiar with Mineshaft?
yeah.
Yeah. I haven't been in the last couple of issues because I've been so preoccupied, but that's where I'll like do comics for them. Ev Rand and his wife Joya are the main brains of that publication, but Crumb is in there, and Spain was in there before he passed away, and Jay Lynch was in there, and Bill Griffith, and all these people I admire. Sometimes I feel like I'm one of the younger people in there. So I'm sure I'll do some more stuff for Mineshaft. And I'm working on a cover for a single by Jack Harberger's Celebrity Telethon is the name of his band, and I'm doing something for them. And I have another animation project where I was hired to write the script and storyboard the thing. And so then they had to get a sponsor to pay for it because it's expensive to do animation. But I found out recently that they got the funding. So I don't want to talk too much about it because I'll jinx it. And I hate talking about something before it's done, because then if it doesn't happen, I look like a big liar.
That's why I said, talk about the things you could talk about. You don't have to talk about stuff you're not sure of, or it's still
I just don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. Yeah.
But posters, record covers, t-shirt designs are always happening. And I have I have a checklist here. I'll open up my checklist here. Sam Miller covers done. The Celebrity Telethon thing is about to happen. Oh, I'm doing Lavender Country's 50th anniversary poster. I've got somebody that's paying me a good amount of money to draw their dog, but
it's not me.
But they don't want a straight portrait. They said we want you to make a really ridiculous Pat Moriarity version. So and then there's a singer named Kimberly Hillstad, and I'm doing a logo for her. I'm doing a logo for Sci-Fi Western. I'm doing a logo for Face the Sun. That's all music. There's a music event called Olala Palooza. I'm doing something for them. And then, here's another project. Have you heard of the Gits?
Yeah.
They're a punk rock band from the 90s.
Yeah.
Mia Zapata she's passed away. She was their lead singer. Well, their drummer, his name is Steve Moriarty. We're not related. We don't even spell our names the same way. But he's writing a memoir about his life, or about his time with the Gits. And their lead singer was murdered. I don't know if you know this, but she was like the first DNA solved case in the United States.
Yeah.
It took 10 years to find her killer. But he said everyone always associates the Gits with this murder, but like we did shows with Nirvana and the
Yeah.
Dead Kennedys and Black Flag, and we did, and Mia was so funny, and she was such a goofball, and blah blah blah. So
Mhm.
he wrote this memoir, and I illustrated 3 chapters in comics format for his book, and then I did spot illustrations for some of the other chapters. So that's a book that he's wrapping up that I've contributed to.
Cool.
And then another book that this is a comics related thing is Frank M. Young. He did the Carter Family book with David Lasky, and he writes a lot for the Comics Journal, and he's a pretty well established writer and cartoonist. The two of us co-wrote a graphic novel, an all ages graphic novel,
Oh, cool.
and called City Cat.
Hmm.
And so we co-wrote it, and I'm going to draw it. And I've drawn about a dozen pages of it, but it's kind of a slow going project because it's one of those you don't get paid until it's done kind of thing.
Wow.
No one hired us to make a graphic novel. I don't think, does anybody get hired to do a graphic novel? But so someday, that will surface, and that'll be cool.
Mhm.
And yeah, anyway, off the top of my head, that's some stuff that's brewing.
Cool. Any now that the pandemic's kind of freeing up, any shows you're attending or anything like that?
Well, I was just at an event yesterday called the Bigfoot Boogie block party,
Mhm.
and that was just yesterday. And my son's band played, and I set up a table, and a bunch of other people were there. And I got this art show thing going on in Poulsbo.
Right.
And then when that's done, I'm going to have another art show. I've got these 2 giant quilts of my t-shirt designs. Well, 65 of my t-shirt designs. I have like an 80-year-old auntie that's like a professional quilt maker,
Mhm.
and she's super good. And I never wear my own t-shirts because it's too self-absorbed and it's kind of embarrassing. So I'm like, I have all these t-shirts piling up, and I'm like, what should I do? So I sent her the shirts, and she made these 2 giant quilts. And
Wow.
so I'm gonna have an exhibition of those 2 quilts at this silkscreen place that has art shows that does a lot of my shirts, and sell t-shirts.
And that's
So
more
that's
art in the
something that's
family. I mean, is everybody in your family artistically inclined? For sure.
my brother Kelly is a better artist than me. He's
Wow.
younger than me, but he's not as motivated as I am. But he's a drummer, and he's in a band in Iowa. My brother Mike just retired from the University of Iowa, but he ran the video department for the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Hmm.
So he went to all their football games and all their basketball games, and supervised the shooting of all the games and edited all their highlight films and everything. So he's, visual guy. And like I said, my dad was a cartoonist.
Right.
My mom retired from being a graphic designer. And then I have cousins and nieces and nephews that are all artists too. So
Wow.
nobody in my family is impressed that I'm an artist at all, because I'm just another one, you know. So
I have
yeah,
a friend, I won't name their name to embarrass them, but they have a similar family to you, except they themselves cannot draw or anything. It's like my dad can draw, my mom can draw, everyone else can draw, but I can't move a pen,
well,
you know.
I think that talent is a myth. I
Yeah.
think that it has to do with blood, sweat, and tears
Yeah.
and struggle. Because I was brainwashed into thinking I was a cartoonist since I was a little kid. It wasn't until years later that I realized that the only reason I think I'm a good artist is, or if I am, is because I just drew all the time and just learned.
Yeah.
And I really hate it when someone comes up to you and then just says, "Oh, I wish I had your talent.
Oh
I
yeah.
sure wish," like, "Oh yeah, I didn't earn any of it. It was just bestowed on me by the heavens, and I didn't have to do any work." It's
Yeah.
like, it so downplays the effort
Yeah.
that an artist has to make. You have to isolate yourself, and you have to make trial and error, and it's not just given to you. And I don't like it when people act like, well, you just have this magic thing that you're lucky to have.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not that good. I just had to struggle, and I still struggle.
Yeah.
That's why I do 20 terrible sketches before I even come up with a good idea.
Right.
I stumble into it.
But at least I would assume you enjoy doing what you do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I do
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of OCD on the cross hatching. I've probably like ruined a couple of pictures by overdoing it.
Oh, well.
And
Well.
but I'm a reclusive person. I'm kind of antisocial.
Mm.
I have social skills. I just don't like to use them. You know, um,
All
I,
right.
I'm happy to stay home and work on artwork. You
Yeah.
know,
Nothing
but
wrong with that, especially if you're turning out good products. So,
and then with the pandemic, I think I probably have Stockholm syndrome now, and I'm just like so used to staying home that now going out into the world seems a little bit intimidating. You know.
well, for me, I tend to write, even though I can draw, I tend to write more. And when the pandemic happened, it didn't bother me at all. In fact, I started writing even more, which is part of the reason why I took on a bunch of book projects. And, it's like now that things are sort of going back to normal, it's like I'm not as productive because now I'm going out and doing things and seeing people and other stuff.
Yeah, I'm still pretending like there's a pandemic, and I'm still sort of just staying home all the time,
Right.
and I'm still a little bit suspicious about COVID because I still keep hearing about people getting it.
Right.
It's not as deadly as it was, but it seems like it's more contagious.
Right.
And I don't want to get it. I don't want to get it. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
So,
In
but
my
I'll eventually get out. I'm getting more social.
get out. No. Anyway.
I,
All
I don't go
right.
to Seattle as much because it's expensive
Uh-huh.
and there's more homeless people around.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm in Port Orchard, which is 14 miles away west, the way the crow flies across the
Okay.
Puget Sound. And it's like Mayberry. It's like you can see the Space Needle from Port Orchard across the water, or from Manchester across the water. But it's like two different planets. It's like a small town and a big town. And if I
Mhm.
want to get on the ferry and go to the show box and see a show and then come back home, it's possible.
Yeah.
But I like being from Iowa. I kind of going back to my small town roots, I guess, and I just like
Mhm.
having privacy and stuff.
Right. I went up in your area once, but I don't know if I went through your town, but is there one called like Kentville or something like that? Does that
Well,
sound
there's
right?
Kent, Washington.
Kent, maybe that's it.
Yeah,
And but I never went to Seattle proper. It was like on the outskirts of
yeah.
town
A lot
because
of people are bailing now. You're probably
yeah.
not missing much. There's people that have been moved down to like Peter Bagg moved down to Tacoma,
Mm,
and but also I hear now that even Tacoma is starting to suck. I don't know if it's
mm,
true or not, but Seattle's so expensive for artists and musicians that I think people are kind of going to the outskirts. Like Jim Blanchard moved up to Bellingham,
mm,
and there's people that are down in Olympia, and kind of like in the outskirts. And also Kitsap County, where I live, is getting weirder by the moment because
yeah.
musicians and artists are coming out here, and it's kind of like a bedroom community to Seattle because you can jump on the ferry and go to Seattle and work downtown and then get back on the ferry and come home
Right.
and get out of town.
Kind of
So
similar with Oregon. Portland was kind of reasonable even 10 years ago, and now it's
yeah,
crazy.
Portland's kind of
Yeah.
scary too.
Yeah. And so I like it where I am in the Eugene
Yeah.
Springfield area. So, yeah,
Springfield, isn't that where The Simpsons is supposed to
it
be?
is. Yeah. And Matt
Yeah.
Groening actually said it was 10 years ago. I just saw this because it's an art museum exhibition about it. There's a big mural down here. Of course, there's a lot of phony murals. You should come down here and paint one. But the real one that was actually commissioned by Groening and everything, and he showed up and everything like that. He said, "Yeah, I've said Springfield is a mystery place, could be anywhere, but I will officially say, because I am from Oregon, that it is Springfield, Oregon." So,
Yeah. That's great.
yeah.
You look a little bit like Matt Groening. You look like a blend between Matt Groening and Kim Thompson.
Hmm,
You know, they're your hairstyle, and
interesting.
but a younger version of both
Yeah.
of those guys.
I've
But
met Matt. I've never met Kim, I don't think. I'm trying to think.
yeah,
I met Gary Groth many times.
yeah, yeah. I just saw him recently because there was an event at the Fantagraphics bookstore called Hot Off the Presses,
Yeah.
and it's another thing where you could set up a table and sell your goods, and so I'm still going to Fantagraphics bookstore a lot and seeing other cartoonists that live around there.
The last time I saw Gary, I told you there was an EC show, and it was 2016 when I first moved up here. And he came down, and Bill Shelley, who's passed away too, we're talking about a lot of people that are gone, had just written a book about Harvey Kurtzman. So that was their big book at the time that they're promoting at that show too. So,
Cool. Well, if you next time you come up here, you should go to the Fantagraphics bookstore if you haven't been there before.
I have not.
It's in Georgetown. It's a great store. Oh, that's such a cute dog you got back there.
That's me. She doesn't like it when she's not the star of the show.
Oh yeah, I'm stealing her thunder.
Well, it's been great talking to you. You had a very illustrious, and I hope it continues, career.
Well, I'm not dead yet, and I have to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I got to keep going.
And maybe you'll get another piece in Mad to tie it into what we started off with,
Yeah, maybe Susie Splabb will see this and she'll go, "Oh yeah, that guy," and I'll get back in there.
It'd be neat if anything, they are doing new covers. Maybe you can get a cover idea. Talk to Susie about that, since you've done covers of other publications you just mentioned on this show. And,
yeah.
But also occasionally.
I saw that you interviewed Dick DeBartolo.
Yeah.
And I also, when I first found out that you wanted to interview me, I was like, what's he doing? So I looked at your site and I watched Sherry Flanagan's interview and looked at some of the other. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I got Peter Bagg on here, Tom Richmond on here. You mentioned a couple other people that I've had on here. Let's see, but I've never met Crumb because he was in France when I had to contact him once. But we did an article years ago about his Weirdo publication. And somebody gave me his email, and I reached out to him and I said, is he going to answer? Because he's in France. He doesn't know who I am. And it took
him a
nice
guy.
It took him a long time, but he wrote these lengthy answers for me. It was the greatest email I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
And so it was like he was sitting right in front of me, just giving long answers about everything for the Weirdo
He presents himself as a curmudgeon, but really there's a heart of gold in there.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. So he was very helpful. I'm very impressed. So anyway,
maybe you'll get him someday.
Yes.
He is busy, and he's 80 years old now. I think he just had a birthday.
Yeah. And hopefully he keeps going, it's like,
he's doing stuff for Mineshaft and he isn't getting any worse. He's just going on and on and on, it's inspiring to see that, It tells me I've got at least 20 more years in me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know other people, you may not know them, but like Frank Hill just turned 93. He used to draw for Dennis the Menace comic books for Hank Ketchum and things like that.
Al Jaffe was like just retired and he was like almost 100, I think.
Yeah, and I think he's 101 now. So.
Yeah, he's still alive. I bet he's still doing artwork. And then Sergio Aragonis.
Yeah, he's 85 now.
Stuff for Mad. It's like, so that's great.
Yeah, and even supposed youngsters like Jim Steranko, he's in his 80s now, and things like that. It's amazing, All right. Well, I thank you, Pat, for being a special guest. We can
appreciate your interest. Anytime anybody's interested, it's like a kind of a kick in the pants for me because, like I said, I work in isolation and I don't really know what's going out there or if anyone's paying attention.
Yeah.
So
I love artists. I love artwork. I love comic books. I try to feature all types. Kid comics, adult comics, superhero comics. Anything.
What's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite is probably like kid comics. I like the Harvey stuff, and Archie and stuff like that. But
when I was a kid, that was all about Casper and Hot Stuff and Little Dot.
Yep.
And hot stuff.
Yep.
All that stuff was my favorite. Harvey comics. Yeah.
So totally versed in that. I did a book about their history. It's 700 pages long.
Wow.
30 years of research. So yes, I love Harvey comics. So.
Well, if you do this book about Mad, put me on the last page.
Well,
maybe I'm worth a sentence.
Exactly. Oh, and Pat.
Yeah, the last idiot.
Yes. All right. Well, I looked on Doug Guilford's, who was a guest too, Doug Guilford's Mad cover site. You did 2 pieces in Mad, number 6 and number 9 is according to what it said in there. So
yeah.
So anyway, but hopefully you'll get something else and something soon, and we'll see you again in Mad, or definitely all the other projects you're working on.
If you're in touch with me on Facebook, I always post things I'm working on. Okay. I don't keep up on my website too much. patmoriarity.com is my website. Mm-hmm. And that has my email address, and it has links to my animated shorts and some other things. But I'm very negligent on updating it. But on Facebook, almost every day I throw something up there. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest again, Pat. And again, this is Mark Arnold, and I thank you for joining me for another Fun Ideas podcast. And we'll see you next time.
So long.